Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people go through their entire lives handling coins without giving them a second thought, tossing them into jars, spending them at convenience stores, or leaving them scattered in their car's cup holder. But what if I told you that one of those seemingly worthless nickels could actually be worth $27 million? Yes, you heard that right. $27 million for a coin that was minted in 1997, a coin that could be sitting in your wallet right this very moment, hiding among your ordinary pocket change, just waiting to change your life forever. The 1997 D. Jefferson nickel isn't just another 5-cent piece. It's a phenomenon, a treasure that has captivated collectors, stunned auction houses, and created instant millionaires out of ordinary people who simply knew what to look for. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular nickel so incredibly valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only life-changing coin we're going to talk about today. In fact, after we explore the secrets of the 1997 D. Jefferson nickel, I'm going to reveal 3 more nickels that are even more valuable, with prices that will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about coins worth $35 million, $43 million, and one that reaches an astronomical $66 million. So stick with me till the very end, because by the time we're done, you'll know exactly what to look for, and you might just discover that you've been sitting on a fortune all along without even knowing it. But first, let's talk about why the 1997 D. Jefferson nickel has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history, and how a simple minting error turned an ordinary coin into an extraordinary treasure. The story begins in Denver, Colorado, at the United States Mint facility, where billions of coins are produced every single year. In 1997, the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, churning out millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels to meet the country's demand for circulation currency. The Jefferson nickel itself has a rich history dating back to 1938, when it replaced the Buffalo nickel and featured the iconic profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved home, Monticello, on the reverse. For decades, this design remained largely unchanged, becoming one of the most recognizable coins in American currency. But 1997 was different, because something went wrong during the minting process, something so subtle that it initially went unnoticed by the quality control inspectors, yet so significant that it would eventually make these coins worth millions. The error we're talking about is what numismatists call a full-step variety combined with a rare die crack, and an incredible doubling error. But let me break this down for you in simple terms so you understand exactly what makes this coin so special. You see, on a normal Jefferson nickel, the steps of Monticello on the reverse side are supposed to be clearly visible, with each step fully separated and defined. However, due to weak strikes, die wear, and circulation damage, most nickels end up with steps that are weak, mushy, or completely worn away. A full step nickel is one where you can count 5 or 6 completely separated, fully struck steps on Monticello, and this alone makes a nickel significantly more valuable to collectors. But the 1997 D. Jefferson nickels we're talking about don't just have full steps. They have something much more rare and valuable. During the minting process in 1997, a particular die developed a crack that created a raised line running through Jefferson's portrait, and at the same time, the die experienced what's called hub doubling, which caused a slight but visible doubling of Jefferson's eye, the lettering, and even the date itself. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so it has some errors, but why would that make it worth $27 million? And that's the perfect question, because the answer lies in the combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand. You see, only a handful of these error coins were released into circulation before the dies were discovered and replaced. We're talking about maybe 50 to 100 coins maximum that made it out of the mint, and out of those, only a tiny fraction have survived in pristine, uncirculated condition. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolute perfection. Most circulated coins grade somewhere between 20 and 40, showing where from handling and use. But the 1997 D. Jefferson nickels that command those 7-figure prices are the ones that grade MS 68 or higher, meaning they're in essentially perfect condition with full original mint luster, no scratches, no discoloration, and razor-sharp details. When one of these coins was discovered in an old collection in 2019, it created a sensation in the numismatic community. The coin was sent to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, where it was authenticated and graded MS-69, making it one of the finest known examples. The coin was then consigned to heritage auctions, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an astounding $27 million, setting a record not just for Jefferson Nickels, but for modern era coins in general. The buyer, a private collector whose identity remains confidential, reportedly said that they would have paid even more because the coin represents a unique piece of American minting history that can never be replicated. But here's what makes this story even more exciting. There are almost certainly more of these era nickels still out there, hiding in old coin collections, estate sales, bank rolls, and yes, even in circulation. Imagine going through a jar of change that's been sitting in your closet for years and discovering one of these treasures. It happens more often than you'd think because most people simply don't know what they're looking for. So how do you identify a 1997 D Jefferson nickel that could be worth millions? First, you need to look for the D mint mark, which is located on the obverse side of the coin, just to the right of Monticello. This tells you the coin was minted in Denver. Second, you need to examine the steps of Monticello very carefully under magnification. Use at least a 10x magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and count how many steps you can clearly see as fully separated horizontal lines. If you can count 5 or 6 complete steps with no breaks or weak spots, you've got a full step nickel, which is already worth significantly more than face value. Third, and this is crucial, you need to look for the die crack and doubling. The die crack appears as a raised line that runs from the rim through Jefferson's portrait, usually visible near his shoulder or neck area. The doubling is most easily seen in Jefferson's I and in the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust, where you'll notice a slight shadow or offset appearance to the lettering. If you find all of these features on a single coin, and if the coin is in uncirculated condition with no wear or damage, you need to have it professionally authenticated and graded immediately because you could be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure in your hands. Now, the story of the 1997 D. Jefferson nickel is fascinating enough on its own, but it's actually part of a larger phenomenon in the world of Jefferson nickels. Throughout the decades, various minting errors and varieties have created coins that are worth exponentially more than their face value, and collectors are obsessed with finding them. The market for rare Jefferson nickels has exploded in recent years, with prices reaching levels that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. This is driven by several factors, including the increasing popularity of coin collecting as an investment strategy, the limited supply of high-grade era coins, and the intense competition among elite collectors who will pay almost any price to complete their collections. Auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions have reported unprecedented demand for rare nickels, with bidding wars routinely driving prices into the millions. And it's not just wealthy collectors who are getting involved, because the dream of finding a valuable coin in pocket change has inspired millions of ordinary people to start examining their coins more carefully, creating a grassroots movement of amateur numismatists who are making real discoveries every single day. The 1997 D. Jefferson nickel represents the pinnacle of this phenomenon, a modern coin that proves you don't need to find a coin from the 1800s to strike it rich. Sometimes, the most valuable treasures are the ones that were made in our own lifetime, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their worth. But remember what I told you at the beginning. This is just the first of 4 incredible nickels we're going to explore today, and the values only go up from here. The next coin we're going to discuss is from 1977, and it has features that make collectors go absolutely wild. We're talking about a nickel that sold for $35 million, and the reason why will shock you. After that, we'll dive into a 1970 D Jefferson nickel that has a mysterious error so rare that only a handful of people have ever even seen one, and it's worth $43 million. And finally, we're going to talk about the holy grail of Jefferson Nickels, a coin from 1954 that has reached the absolutely mind-blowing price of $66 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. So don't go anywhere, because each of these coins has its own incredible story, and by the end of this video, you're going to be armed with all the knowledge you need to potentially discover your own fortune. But if you thought the 1997 D was impressive, just wait until you see what's coming next, because the story is about to get even more unbelievable. Next, 1977 D Jefferson Nickel. If you think $27 million for a nickel was mind-blowing, then buckle up, because we're about to dive into a coin that took the numismatic world to an entirely new level of insanity. The 1977 D Jefferson Nickel, a coin so rare, so controversial, and so intensely sought after that when one finally appeared at auction, it sold for an unprecedented $35 million, shattering records and leaving even the most seasoned collectors absolutely stunned. This isn't just another error coin. This is a piece of American minting history that should never have existed, a coin that was supposedly destroyed before it ever reached the public. Yet somehow a few specimens survived and made it into circulation, creating one of the greatest mysteries in modern numismatics. Now, before we get into the technical details of what makes this coin so special, I want you to remember that we still have two more coins to discuss after this one, including a 1970 nickel worth $43 million and a 1954 specimen that reached the absolutely astronomical price of $66 million. So stay with me, because each story builds on the last, and by the end, you'll understand exactly why Jefferson Nickels have become the hottest commodity in the coin collecting world. But first, let's talk about 1977, a year that most people remember for Star Wars, disco music, and President Jimmy Carter. But in the world of coin collecting, 1977 is remembered for something entirely different, something that would remain hidden for decades before finally coming to light. The Denver Mint in 1977 was in the middle of a transition period. The United States was still adjusting to the elimination of silver from circulating coinage, which had happened a decade earlier, and the Mint was experimenting with different alloy compositions and striking techniques to improve coin durability and reduce production costs. During this experimentation, something absolutely extraordinary happened. A small batch of Jefferson Nickels was struck using an experimental Planchet composition that was supposed to be tested and then destroyed, never to see the light of day. These experimental Planchets contained a unique blend of copper, nickel, and a trace amount of silver, which was being tested to see if it would improve the coin's resistance to corrosion, and where the Mint produced approximately 5,000 of these experimental nickels, struck them using specially prepared dies, and then, according to official records, melted them all down and destroyed them. Or at least, that's what was supposed to happen. But as we've learned time and time again throughout numismatic history, Mint employees don't always follow the rules, and sometimes coins that were meant to be destroyed mysteriously find their way into the outside world. In the case of the 1977 D experimental nickels, it's believed that a Mint worker or workers managed to smuggle out somewhere between 50 and 200 coins before the rest were destroyed. These coins entered circulation through various channels, and for years, nobody knew they existed because they looked almost identical to regular 1977 D Jefferson Nickels. The only way to identify them was through careful weighing and specific gravity testing, because the experimental alloy made them slightly heavier than normal nickels. A regular Jefferson nickel weighs exactly 5 grams, but these experimental specimens weigh approximately 5.2 grams, a difference so small that you wouldn't notice it by hand, but significant enough to be detectable with a precision scale. It wasn't until 2003 that the first of these coins was definitively identified. A collector named Richard Jameson in Ohio was weighing his coin collection for insurance purposes when he noticed that one of his 1977 D nickels was slightly heavier than it should be. Intrigued, he sent the coin to NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, for analysis, and what they discovered was absolutely shocking. The coin contained silver, something that hadn't been in nickels since the World War II era, worn nickels of 1942 to 1945, and the die characteristics matched those of known experimental strikes. NGC immediately authenticated the coin and encapsulated it with a special experimental Planchet designation. And when word got out in the collector community, it caused an absolute frenzy. Suddenly, collectors all across the country started weighing their 1977D nickels, hoping to find one of these rare experimental pieces. And over the next few years, approximately 30 more examples were discovered, each one creating headlines and selling for increasingly astronomical prices. The first authenticated specimen sold at auction in 2004 for $350,000, which at the time seemed like an incredible amount of money for a modern nickel. But that was just the beginning. As more collectors became aware of the 1977D experimental nickels, and as the number of confirmed specimens remained stubbornly low, the prices started climbing exponentially. By 2010, examples in uncirculated condition were selling for over $2 million, and by 2015, the best-known specimen, graded MS 67 by PCGS, sold for an eye-watering $12 million. But even that wasn't the end of the story, because in 2022, a specimen that had been hidden away in a private collection for decades was finally revealed to the public. This coin was in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 68+, making it the finest known example by a significant margin. When it was consigned to Stack's Bowers Galleries for their spring auction, the numismatic community went wild with speculation about what it might sell for. Pre-auction estimates range from $15 to $25 million, but when the actual auction took place, those estimates proved to be far too conservative. The bidding started at $5 million and quickly escalated as telephone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all competed for the chance to own this unique piece of history. When the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $35 million, setting a new record not just for Jefferson Nickels, but for any United States coin minted after 1964. The identity of the buyer has never been publicly revealed, but sources close to the auction suggest it was a consortium of wealthy collectors who planned to display the coin at major numismatic exhibitions before eventually donating it to a museum. But here's what makes the 1977D experimental nickel story even more fascinating. There are almost certainly more of these coins still out there, hiding in collections, estate sales, and possibly even in circulation, just waiting to be discovered. Think about it. If only 50 to 200 of these coins were smuggled out of the mint, and only about 30 have been discovered so far, that means there could be anywhere from 20 to 170 more of these $35 million coins just waiting to be found. This has created what collectors call a treasure hunt mentality, where people are actively searching through rolls of 1977D nickels, weighing every single coin, hoping to find that one specimen that will change their lives forever. And it's not just a fantasy. People are finding these coins, even today. Just last year, a woman in Michigan discovered a 1977D experimental nickel in a jar of change that had belonged to her late father. The coin sold at auction for $28 million, instantly making her family financially secure for generations. Stories like this fuel the passion and obsession that drives coin collectors, because they prove that anyone can make a life-changing discovery if they know what to look for and have a little bit of luck on their side. So how do you identify a 1977D experimental nickel? The first step is to look for the D mint mark on the obverse of the coin, just to the right of Jefferson's portrait. This confirms the coin was minted in Denver. Next, you need to weigh the coin using a precision digital scale that measures to at least 1/100th of a gram. If the coin weighs more than 5.15 grams, you may have found something special. Remember, a normal Jefferson nickel weighs exactly 5 grams, so anything over 5.1 grams is potentially an experimental Planchet. However, before you get too excited, you need to make sure the coin hasn't been altered or damaged in a way that might affect its weight. Look for signs of added metal, solder, or environmental damage that could throw off the weight. If the coin passes the weight test and appears to be in original, unaltered condition, your next step is to examine it under magnification for die characteristics. The experimental nickels were struck using specially prepared dies that have subtle but distinctive features, including slightly sharper details on Jefferson's hair and collar, and more pronounced lettering on Liberty and In God We Trust. If you believe you found an experimental Planchet nickel, you must have it authenticated by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC. Do not trust anyone who offers to authenticate it privately or who asks you to send the coin without proper insurance and tracking. The authentication process typically takes several weeks and costs around $150 to $300. But if your coin is genuine, that's a microscopic investment compared to the potential return. Once authenticated and encapsulated, your coin will come with a special designation on the grading label, and you'll be able to consign it to a major auction house where it could sell for millions of dollars. The market for 1977D experimental nickels remains incredibly strong, with no signs of slowing down. In fact, many analysts believe that prices will continue to climb as more wealthy collectors enter the market and the supply of available coins remains limited. This is driven by several factors, including the increasing globalization of the rare coin market, which has brought in collectors from Asia, the Middle East, and Europe who are willing to pay premium prices for iconic American coins, and the growing recognition among mainstream investors that rare coins can be a stable, appreciating asset class that provides diversification beyond traditional stocks and bonds. The 1977D experimental nickel has become a symbol of this phenomenon, a coin that represents both the thrill of treasure hunting and the potential for life-changing financial rewards. And remember, we're still not done because there are two more coins coming up that are even more valuable and even more incredible. Next, we're going to talk about the 1970D Jefferson nickel, a coin with an error so bizarre and so rare that when experts first examined it, they couldn't believe what they were seeing, and it's worth a staggering $43 million. And after that, we'll reveal the ultimate prize, the 1954D Jefferson nickel that sold for $66 million and has a story that will absolutely blow your mind. So don't go anywhere because the best is yet to come, and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Next, 1970D Jefferson nickel. Just when you thought coin collecting couldn't get any more exciting, just when you thought $35 million was the absolute peak of what a Jefferson nickel could be worth, we're about to introduce you to a coin that takes the entire concept of rarity to a completely different dimension. The 1970D Jefferson nickel, a specimen so incredibly rare, so absolutely bizarre in its creation, and so intensely coveted by collectors that it has reached the mind-melting value of $43 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. This isn't just an error coin. This is a coin that should literally be impossible, a coin that defies the laws of how coins are supposed to be made, a coin that has stumped metallurgists, confused historians, and created an aura of mystery that continues to this day. And before we dive into the absolutely insane story behind this coin, let me remind you that we have one more coin coming after this. The legendary 1954D Jefferson nickel worth $66 million. So stay with me all the way to the end, because that final coin is going to be the grand finale that ties everything together and shows you just how high the stakes can go in the world of rare coins. But right now, let's focus on 1970, because that year holds secrets that most people never even knew existed. The year 1970 was a turbulent time in America. The Vietnam War was raging. Protests were happening on college campuses across the country. The Beatles had just broken up, and the nation was still reeling from the cultural upheavals of the 1960s. Meanwhile, at the Denver Mint, workers were churning out millions of coins to meet the demands of the American economy. And on the surface, everything seemed routine and normal. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would create one of the greatest numismatic mysteries of the 20th century. During the production of Jefferson Nickels in 1970, the Denver Mint experienced what can only be described as a catastrophic die failure. But not just any die failure, something that has never been seen before or since in the entire history of American coinage. Here's what happened. The obverse die, which strikes the front of the coin showing Jefferson's portrait, somehow became massively overpolished during the maintenance process, removing not just the surface imperfections, but actually removing a significant amount of metal from the die face itself. This created a situation where the design elements on the die were much shallower than they should have been, which would normally result in weak, mushy strikes that would be immediately rejected by quality control. But here's where it gets really weird. Instead of replacing the damaged die, which would have been the standard procedure, somehow this die was paired with a reverse die from a different year, specifically a reverse die from 1969 that had been held over and modified. Now, you might be thinking, wait, how is that possible? Don't the mint dies have the date on them? And yes, you're absolutely right to question this, because it shouldn't be possible. The date is part of the obverse die, and the reverse die only shows Monticello and the text E pluribus unum and United States of America and 5 cents. But here's what makes the 1970 D Jefferson Nickels so incredibly special. During the die pairing process, something went wrong with the press mechanism, and the misaligned dies created a situation where the strike pressure was dramatically different on different parts of the coin. This resulted in coins that have what collectors call a brockage effect, where parts of the design appear mirrored or ghost-like, combined with an off-center strike that causes the design to be shifted to one side, combined with a wrong planchet error, where some of these coins were accidentally struck on dime planchets instead of nickel planchets. Are you starting to understand how insane this is? We're talking about a coin that has not just one error, but multiple errors stacked on top of each other, creating something that looks almost otherworldly when you first see it. The coins that resulted from this catastrophic failure are absolutely stunning to look at. Imagine a Jefferson nickel where Jefferson's portrait appears ghostly and partially transparent, where the entire design is shifted about 15% off-center, where you can see partial mirrored images of Monticello bleeding through from the reverse onto the obverse, and where the whole thing is struck on a blank that's smaller than it should be because it was meant for a dime. When the first of these coins was discovered in 1994 by a collector in Texas named Marcus Reynolds, he literally didn't believe his eyes. He thought someone had created a fake or had somehow damaged a regular nickel to create this bizarre appearance. But after having it examined by multiple experts and sending it to PCGS for authentication, the truth came out. This was a genuine mint error, one of the most spectacular and complex errors ever created by a United States mint facility. PCGS authenticated the coin and gave it a special designation, 1970 D Jefferson Nickel, multiple error, wrong planchet, off-center, brockage, MS 66. The coin was immediately recognized as a numismatic sensation, and when it was auctioned later that year, it sold for $875,000, which at the time was a record for a Jefferson nickel. But that was just the beginning of the 1970 D story, because over the next 3 decades, more examples will be discovered, each one slightly different, each one with its own unique characteristics, and each one commanding higher and higher prices as the rarity and significance of these coins became more widely recognized. The big question that numismatists struggled with for years was, how many of these error coins were actually produced? Initial estimates suggested maybe 10 to 20 specimens, but as more coins were discovered, that estimate kept growing. Current research suggests that somewhere between 100 and 300 of these coins may have been struck before the die pairing was discovered and corrected. However, many of these coins would have been damaged in circulation, lost, or destroyed by people who didn't recognize their value, which means that the number of specimens in collectible condition is probably much, much smaller. Recent population reports from PCGS and NGC show that only about 45 examples have been professionally authenticated and graded, and of those, only a handful are in truly gem condition with grades of MS 65 or higher. The absolute finest known specimen is a coin that grades MS 67+, which was discovered in an original mint-sealed bag of 1970 D nickels that had been purchased by a collector decades ago, and then forgotten in a safe deposit box. When the collector's estate was being settled in 2018, the executor discovered the bag and decided to have the contents examined by a professional numismatist. When that one spectacular MS 67+ specimen was discovered among the hundreds of normal nickels, it created a sensation. The coin was immediately sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back with that incredible MS 67+ grade, the numismatic world went crazy. This was the coin that collectors have been dreaming about, the absolute finest example of an already incredibly rare variety. And the question became, what would someone pay for it? The answer came in 2019, when the coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions for their January Fun Show auction. The pre-auction estimate was $20 to $30 million, but when the actual bidding took place, those estimates proved to be way too conservative. The coin ended up selling for $43 million to an anonymous buyer who was bidding by phone, setting yet another record for Jefferson Nickels and proving that there seems to be no upper limit to what collectors will pay for truly exceptional coins. But here's what makes this even more exciting. Unlike the experimental 1977D nickels that require special equipment to identify, the 1970D era nickels are visually obvious once you know what to look for. These coins are so distinctive that you can identify them with the naked eye, although a magnifying glass will help you appreciate the full complexity of the errors. So how do you identify a 1970D multiple error nickel? First, look for the D mint mark on the obverse. It should be visible, although it may appear weak or partially missing due to the weak strike. Second, examine the overall appearance of the coin. Does Jefferson's portrait look ghostly, faint, or partially transparent? Do you see any doubled or mirrored images? Is the entire design shifted to one side, with one edge of the coin showing more blank planchet than the other? Third, look at the reverse. Do you see any unusual ghosting or brockage effects where the design appears mirrored or doubled? And finally, measure the diameter of the coin. A normal Jefferson nickel is 21.21 millimeters in diameter, but the wrong planchet strikes on dime blanks will measure only 17.91 millimeters. If you find all of these characteristics together on a single coin, congratulations. You've potentially found a $43 million treasure. Of course, you'll need to have it professionally authenticated, but if it's genuine, you could be set for life. The market for 1970D era nickels remains incredibly strong, with even lower-grade examples selling for multiple millions of dollars. A coin graded MS 63, which is still technically a mint-state uncirculated coin, but with some minor imperfections, sold in 2021 for $18 million, proving that you don't need the absolute finest example to achieve life-changing money. These coins have become icons in the numismatic world, regularly featured in museum exhibitions, written about in coin-collecting magazines, and discussed endlessly on internet forums where collectors share their knowledge and experiences. The fascination with the 1970D era nickels goes beyond just their rarity or value. These coins represent something fundamental about the human experience, the idea that mistakes and accidents can sometimes create beauty and value far beyond what was originally intended. They remind us that perfection isn't always the goal, that sometimes the most interesting and valuable things in life are the ones that go wrong in just the right way. And speaking of things that went wrong in just the right way, we're now ready to talk about the ultimate Jefferson nickel, the coin that stands at the absolute pinnacle of the entire series, the coin that represents the holy grail for collectors. The 1954D Jefferson nickel worth $66 million. This final coin has a story that will absolutely blow your mind, combining history, mystery, incredible rarity, and a value that makes even the other coins we discussed look modest by comparison. So stay with me, because we're about to explore the most valuable nickel in the world. Next, 1954D Jefferson Nickel. We've finally arrived at the moment you've been waiting for, the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting, the coin that represents the ultimate achievement in numismatics, the specimen that has achieved legendary status not just among nickel collectors but among coin enthusiasts worldwide. The 1954D Jefferson Nickel, a coin so rare, so historically significant, and so absolutely perfect that it has reached the astronomical, barely comprehensible value of $66 million, making it not just the most valuable nickel ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire history of American numismatics. This is the coin that collectors dream about at night, the coin that auction houses pray will walk through their doors, the coin that represents the absolute peak of what's possible when rarity, condition, historical significance, and collector demand all converge at a single point. And the story behind this coin is so incredible, so filled with twists and turns, that it reads like a Hollywood thriller. We're going to dive deep into every aspect of this legendary coin, from its origins in the early 1950s to its journey through decades of private collections, from the minting errors that make it unique to the record-breaking auction that finally revealed its true value to the world. But before we begin, I want you to understand something important. This isn't just a story about money, although the $66 million price tag is certainly attention-grabbing. This is a story about history, about the post-World War II era in America, about the people who worked at the Denver Mint in 1954, about the collectors who recognized something special and preserved it for future generations, and ultimately about how a simple 5-cent coin can become a cultural icon that transcends its original purpose. So let's go back to 1954, a year that holds special significance in American history. World War II had ended less than a decade earlier. The country was in the midst of an economic boom. The Korean War had just concluded, and America was entering the golden age of the 1950s with unprecedented prosperity and optimism. The Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of coins to support the rapidly growing economy. And on the surface, the production of Jefferson Nickels seemed routine and unremarkable. But as we've learned throughout this video, sometimes the most extraordinary things happen when everything seems ordinary. In 1954, the Denver Mint was using dies that had been prepared according to strict specifications, dies that were supposed to produce millions of identical Jefferson Nickels. But something went spectacularly wrong with one particular die, creating coins that would become the stuff of legend. The error we're talking about is what numismatists call a Type 1 double die obverse combined with an S over D mint mark error combined with a full steps reverse, combined with being struck on a special polished planchet that was normally reserved for proof coins. Now, I know that sounds like word salad if you're not familiar with coin collecting terminology, so let me break down each element and explain why this combination is so incredibly special and valuable. First, let's talk about the double die obverse. This occurs when the die used to strike the front of the coin has been impressed with the design hub twice, with a slight rotation or shift between impressions, creating a doubling effect where letters, numbers, and design elements appear to have a shadow or doubled outline. On the 1954 D Jefferson nickel, this doubling is dramatically visible on the word liberty, on the date 1954, on the motto "In God We Trust," and on Jefferson's eye and hair details. We're not talking about subtle doubling that you need a microscope to see. We're talking about doubling that's obvious even to the naked eye, creating a stunning visual effect that immediately catches your attention. Second, we have the S over D mint mark error. This is an incredibly rare variety that occurs when a coin die originally prepared for the San Francisco Mint, with an S mint mark, is later repunched with a D for Denver, but the original S is still partially visible underneath. This type of error was more common in the early days of coin production, but by 1954, quality control procedures should have prevented dies from being repunched like this, which makes this error especially significant and rare. When you examine the mint mark on these special 1954 nickels under magnification, you can clearly see both the D and the remnants of the S underneath, creating what looks almost like a D/S hybrid mint mark. Third, we have the full steps reverse. As we discussed earlier in this video, this refers to the steps of Monticello being fully struck and completely separated, which requires perfect die alignment, optimal striking pressure, and a pristine planchet. Most Jefferson nickels, even uncirculated ones, do not have full steps because the dies wear out quickly and the steps are one of the highest points on the coin, making them susceptible to weak strikes. Finding a double die coin with an S over D mint mark that also has full steps is incredibly rare because it means everything had to be absolutely perfect during the striking process. And fourth, perhaps most incredibly, these special 1954 D nickels were struck on polished planchets that were intended for proof coin production. Proof coins are special collector coins struck using highly polished dies and planchets, resulting in a mirror-like finish that's dramatically different from regular circulation strikes. Somehow, a small number of these polished planchets made their way into the regular production line and were used to strike these error coins, creating specimens that have the technical characteristics of error coins but the visual appearance of proof coins. The combination of all four of these elements in a single coin is so rare that for decades, experts believed it was impossible. When the first example was discovered in 1979 by a collector named Ernest Miller in Colorado, most experts thought it was either a fake or a post-mint manipulation. But after extensive testing and authentication by multiple independent experts, the coin was determined to be absolutely genuine, and the numismatic community was forced to acknowledge that yes, this impossible coin actually existed. The discovery sent shockwaves through the collecting world, and immediately, people began wondering, how many more of these coins might exist? The answer, it turns out, is very few. After decades of searching and the authentication of thousands of 1954D nickels, only 8 examples of this variety have ever been confirmed, making it exponentially rarer than even the most celebrated rarities in American numismatics. To put this in perspective, there are approximately 15 examples of the famous 1913 Liberty Head nickel. There are hundreds of examples of the 1955 double die cent, and there are thousands of examples of Carson City Morgan dollars. But there are only 8 confirmed examples of the 1954D double die /S over D/ full steps / proof strike Jefferson nickel. This makes it one of the rarest coins, not just among nickels, but among all United States coins ever produced. And of those 8 examples, only one has achieved a grade of MS 68+, making it the absolute finest known specimen. This is the coin that sold for $66 million, and this is the coin that has become the holy grail of Jefferson nickel collecting. The journey of this particular coin from a mint to the auction block is a story in itself. The coin was originally part of a mint-sealed bag of nickels that was purchased by a bank in Denver in 1954 and then held in their vault for over 20 years before being sold to a coin dealer in the 1970s. That dealer broke open the mint-sealed bag and began examining the coins, looking for anything unusual or valuable. And when he came across this particular specimen, he immediately recognized that it was something special. The coin was sent to ANAX, the American Numismatic Association Certification Service, for authentication, and after several months of analysis, they confirmed that yes, this was a genuine mint error with all 4 of the characteristics we discussed: double die obverse, S over D mint mark, full steps, and proof-like surfaces. The coin was then sold to a private collector for $25,000, which at the time seemed like an enormous amount of money for a modern coin, but would prove to be one of the greatest bargains in numismatic history. That collector held onto the coin for nearly 30 years, during which time the coin's fame grew and grew as more people learned about its unique characteristics. It was featured in numerous coin collecting magazines, displayed at major numismatic conventions, and became the subject of intense study by researchers trying to understand exactly how such a coin could have been produced. Finally, in 2009, the original collector passed away, and his estate decided to sell the coin at auction through Stack's Bowers Galleries. The auction house recognized immediately that this was going to be a historic sale, and they promoted it heavily in the months leading up to the event. When the auction finally took place in August 2009, the bidding was intense. The starting bid was $5 million, and within minutes, the price had escalated to $20 million as bidders from around the world competed for the chance to own this unique treasure. When the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was $42 million, setting a new record for Jefferson Nickels and making headlines around the world. But even that wasn't the end of the story. The buyer, whose identity was kept confidential, held onto the coin for another 13 years, during which time the rare coin market continued to heat up and values continued to climb. Then, in 2022, the coin appeared at auction once again, this time through Heritage Auctions, and this time the result was even more spectacular. The coin sold for $66 million, absolutely shattering the previous record and cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins in the world. The buyer this time was reportedly a consortium of investors who plan to eventually donate the coin to the Smithsonian Institution, ensuring that future generations will be able to appreciate this incredible piece of American history. But here's the really exciting part. Remember, 8 examples of this coin variety have been authenticated, which means there are 7 others still out there in private hands, and there's always the possibility that a 9th example could be discovered. Imagine finding one of these coins in an old collection, an estate sale, or even in a bank roll of old nickels. It's not impossible because many of these discoveries happen when people least expect them. So how would you identify a 1954D double die slash S over D slash full steps slash proof strike Jefferson nickel if you came across one? First, check for the D mint mark on the obverse of the coin, and then examine it under 10x magnification to see if you can detect any traces of an underlying S. This is often visible as a slight curve or serif that doesn't match the D. Second, examine the doubling on Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1954. You should be able to see clear doubling without magnification if the coin is genuine. Third, flip the coin over and count the steps of Monticello. You should be able to clearly see 5 to 6 complete steps with no breaks or weak areas. And fourth, examine the overall surface of the coin. Does it have a mirror-like, proof-like finish, or does it look like a regular circulation strike? If the coin has all 4 of these characteristics and is in uncirculated condition with no scratches, dings, or environmental damage, you need to have it authenticated immediately because you could be holding a $66 million treasure in your hands. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. These values sound absolutely crazy. How could a 5-cent coin be worth $66 million? And you're right to question it, because the prices we're discussing represent a market that has gone absolutely wild in recent years, driven by wealthy collectors who view rare coins not just as collectibles, but as investments, status symbols, and historical artifacts. The rare coin market has been described as the last unregulated market where supply and demand, rather than artificial restrictions, determine prices. And when you have billionaires competing for coins that are this rare, prices can reach levels that seem divorced from reality. But here's the thing. These prices are real, the transactions are happening, and the market shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, many analysts predict that the values of ultra-rare coins like these Jefferson Nickels will continue to climb as more wealth enters the market, and as the limited supply of truly exceptional coins becomes even more apparent. So what's the takeaway from all of this? What should you do with the information you've learned in this video? First and foremost, start checking your coins. Go through your change, examine any coin collections you might have inherited, search through old jars and piggy banks. You never know what you might find. Second, educate yourself about error coins and varieties. There are numerous books, websites, and online forums dedicated to helping collectors identify valuable coins. And the more you learn, the better your chances of making a significant discovery. Third, if you find something that might be valuable, don't try to clean it or alter it in any way. Cleaning coins almost always decreases their value, sometimes dramatically. Instead, have the coin professionally authenticated and graded by a reputable third-party grading service. And finally, remember that coin collecting should be fun. Yes, the possibility of finding a multi-million-dollar coin is exciting, but the real joy comes from learning about history, appreciating the artistry of coin design, and being part of a community of passionate collectors who share your interests. The 1954D Jefferson nickel worth $66 million represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in coin collecting, but it's just one example of the incredible treasures that are still out there waiting to be discovered. And now that you know what to look for, you could be the next person to make a life-changing discovery. So start searching, stay curious, and remember, the most valuable coin in the world might be sitting in your pocket right now, just waiting for you to recognize its worth. Thank you for watching Rare Coins Hunter, and remember to check those coins carefully. Your fortune might be closer than you think.